In Beijing, the symbol of a people's revolution against old-line communism falls to the ground. In Tehran, mourning for the fallen symbol of another revolution, Ayatollah Khomeini. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. It is morning now, Monday, in Beijing, a city under siege by China's own Liberation Army. Gunfire is still being heard in the streets of Beijing, but in many places, a general eerie, uneasy quiet prevails. The government has finally officially admitted that what it calls some civilians died in last night's massacres. Others say thousands died. Our own CBS News survey of hospitals indicate that the death toll is at least 200. Chinese police today freed two CBS newsmen who had been captured and roughed up a bit by the military, correspondent Richard Roth and cameraman Derek Williams. Our CBS News resident China correspondent John Sheehan has the latest tonight from Beijing.
Dan, the communist leaders lied to their soldiers, telling them there was an armed insurrection attempting to overthrow the government. Now, after the bloodbath, they're trying to hide the terrible result. The number of dead will never be truly known. Those in hospitals or homes may be counted, but the Chinese army has also been recovering civilian corpses for quick cremation, concealing the extent of the massacre. A woman weeps over her dead brother, shot down beside her as they walked on a quiet street. Hospital administrators say they have been forbidden to release bodies to relatives for burial. Many of the wounded were bystanders, surprised when the soldiers opened fire indiscriminately. They had always believed that the People's Army would not use force against the people. Today, Beijing is a city enraged. The people call their army fascist and say that the soldiers behaved worse than Nazis. Unarmed civilians have been expressing their anger by setting fire to any military vehicle abandoned or captured. The government acknowledges that 3 soldiers died. At least one was the victim of an angry mob bent on revenge. Soldiers, weary of the unprecedented assault on their own people, rest in the streets, often surrounded by silent, accusing crowds. The earlier time of debating and bantering with the troops is over for the people who for 2 weeks successfully persuaded convoys of soldiers that the pro-democracy students were expressing all the people's distaste at dictatorship and official corruption. Tanks and armored personnel carriers have been patrolling the streets, often firing bursts of bullets to frighten and intimidate. Still, thousands refuse to cower in their homes. Dan, most of the survivors of Tiananmen Square have withdrawn to the Beijing campuses in the northern part of the city. They took a few captured weapons with them, and some of the students have been making Molotov cocktails. They're convinced that the army plans to attack again. New armor and infantry units have moved into the city in the last couple of hours, but so far, not toward the schools. Dan?
John Sheehan, thanks. We're grateful to report that correspondent Richard Roth and cameraman Derek Williams not only are free now, but are all right, thanks in part to the efforts of U.S. Secretary of State James Baker and the State Department and of the Chinese ambassador in Washington. Roth suffered a cut and a black eye. Otherwise, both men were unharmed. They spent most of Sunday in the custody of Chinese police, having been turned over to the police by the military. Troops seized both men as they reported live from Tiananmen Square during the height of the army attack. Roth reports now how that attack gained momentum, how it looked, and how it ended.
It's midnight. It's Sunday in Beijing, and at the center of the encampment of pro-democracy demonstrators, the loudspeaker the students control is announcing, "The soldiers are coming. We're waiting for them. They won't be able to stop our movement." Government announcers are broadcasting 200 yards away. The army is prepared to take the square by whatever means necessary. Leave now. In fact, the battle has already been joined, but it reaches here only in the sound of distant gunfire and the spread of anxious rumor. The battle is underway, but it's being fought in the broad boulevards beyond Tiananmen Square, where civilians are confronting the troops advancing on this position and falling under heavy gunfire from the People's Army. 4 a.m. and the first signs here of the heat of that battle. Troops now enter Tiananmen Square from the south, where there's no longer much resistance, and some of them have been injured getting here. Their numbers are in the thousands. Now lights in the square are turned off. Students at bonfires show a crowd of several thousand demonstrators. And as the troops file into position circling the square, the students announce they are giving up. From a vantage point at a corner of the square, you can see demonstrators leaving. A column of them carrying flags, walking once around the monument in the center of the square and walking out. But you can't see it for long. Soldiers have spotted CBS News cameraman Derek Williams and myself and are angrily dragging us away. And a moment later it begins, powerful bursts of automatic weapons. Raging gunfire for a minute and a half that lasts as long as a nightmare. And we see no more, carried off to an army garrison for detention lasting 19 hours. Richard Roth, CBS News, Beijing.
About 200,000 protesters condemned the Beijing bloodshed today in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is the British colony which the British planned to turn over to mainland Chinese rule in 1997. Sympathizers with the pro-freedom protesters blocked streets in Shanghai, China's own largest city. Chinese students and their supporters vented their anger in at least 20 cities here in the United States. Correspondent David Culhane has that.
In Washington, Chinese students and Chinese Americans asked motorists to honk for a free China. Honk if you love democracy. Hundreds responded with a blare of angry sound. Then the thousands of demonstrators marched to the Chinese embassy to deliver flowers of mourning for the dead. The door opened briefly and then slammed shut. The people repeated their simple message: China, freedom. In New York, again, thousands marching, saying today all Americans are Chinese in their grief. The students asked for help to keep their movement going. And everywhere they expressed their fury, watching from a distance the death in their own country.
People are very, very angry. This is a very unbelievable tragedy happening in China.
This is the biggest tragedy in the Chinese modern history. I feel terrible about it.
And in Los Angeles and San Francisco today, indeed in every major city in America, there were tears. Tears for fellow students, for family members killed or wounded. Tears of worry waiting for news. Around the country, students made telephone contact with Beijing and then played the recorded messages for others. The news was terrible.
What they want is only a democracy and freedom, but the government used troops and killed them. This is really very bad.
And wherever the Chinese students were today, they were trying to come to grips with the question of whether they could go home.
We want to go back to fight the killer government, but my parents was keep saying, don't come back, you will be in trouble.
In Houston, students relieved their feelings with street theater, reenacting the bloody scenes of Beijing. And they played the Chinese national anthem. And they wept. David Culhane, CBS News, New York.
President Bush has notched up his response to the killings in China. He is now openly critical, but remains cautious. His aides say that he is anxious to preserve good U.S. relations with the present Chinese government and whatever, if anything, that may follow. But as White House correspondent Wyatt Andrews reports, the president is under increasing pressure to dish out some kind of retaliation.
President Bush, for now, wants the U.S. reaction to the Chinese carnage limited to words. As he left church today in Kennebunkport, the president stood by yesterday's White House statement deploring the violence and threatening a stall in the U.S.-Chinese relationship.
We already had a statement on that. I hope you read it.
But some members of Congress have read the president's statement and don't think it's strong enough.
It would be politically unacceptable and morally unthinkable, Leslie, for us to continue selling arms to a country which is engaged in the wanton slaughter of its own people.
It is a potential political firestorm for the president, and it begins in the morning.
And I'm going to start tomorrow morning in the Senate to line up bipartisan support to cut off all of that sort of thing. It's folly, and we need to stand with these young people who are trying to achieve freedom.
Supporters of the president argue that events in China are still so uncertain, now is not the time to lash out at the Chinese military.
We don't know who responded.
We may have friends in the military in China. In fact, the military in China may become the government before too long.
And some experts warn that any tough U.S. move to pull back from China could backfire.
And we don't want to give the Soviets and everybody else a free ride by going into a diplomatic antagonism to them.
The controversy means the president returned late today to a Washington different from the one he expected. Rather than bask in the praise of how well he handled Europe last week, he now faces a lively congressional debate over his China policy instead. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, Kennebunkport, Maine.
Still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, the death of Iran's Ayatollah Khomeini, and later, more pictures of Beijing, a story of power and the people.
Here's today's leader in big pickups, Ford. Ford leads in the important advantages that Chevy can't talk about.
Go with the leader.
Ford leads Chevy with a longer, wider, deeper box that carries more maximum payload than Chevy.
Go with the leader.
This Ford costs $715 less than a comparably equipped Chevy, and that's leadership in solid value.
Go with the leader, Ford trucks.
See your dealer now for special savings on select 89 Ford F-Series trucks.
When my arthritis pain acts up, even little things are a big effort. But I don't take aspirin anymore. I take Advil. Advil is the brand many doctors recommend for hours of relief from minor arthritis pain. You know, just one Advil is as effective as 2 regular aspirin. And Advil doesn't upset my stomach the way aspirin sometimes can. So now, I don't even have to think about arthritis. Advil, tablets and caplets, advanced medicine for pain.
Unfortunately, septic systems back up.
What a mess!
What an expense!
But Riddex once a month adds millions of bacteria to digest waste and works to keep your septic system running trouble-free. Riddex, it helps prevent septic system backup.
Do it yourself. Do it for yourself. Do yourself proud with Minwax and Wood.
Wood finish for beautiful color like no other, and Minwax polyurethane for fast-drying protection that lasts.
Do yourself proud with Minwax and Wood.
Iran moved quickly today to name a successor to Ayatollah Khomeini, who died last night in a Tehran hospital. Still, there are serious questions about the future of the country now that the man who toppled the Shah in an Islamic revolution and made Iran a terrorist state is gone. CBS News correspondent Doug Tennell in Paris has our report.
Ever since a weeping Iranian broadcaster announced this morning that Iran's Imam Khomeini was dead, big crowds gathered in Tehran to mourn him. For most Iranians, the Ayatollah died too soon. His legacy was seriously incomplete. The reason is that Khomeini had ordered a complete review of the balance of power in Iran, but died before the review was finished. So even though President Ali Khamenei was elected to succeed Khomeini as supreme leader today, there is no agreement about how he will govern.
One faction or other has got to come to the top, or there must be some kind of stable collective leadership.
After so many years of war with Iraq, Iranians now face the prospect that their own leaders could turn against each other. There are fears of civil war.
There are many armed gangs, each Ayatollah, and there are many of them has his own armed groups, and of course there are 4 or 5 major factions. They may fight it out.
One key player, Parliament Speaker Hashemi Rafsanjani. He controls the army and the security forces and generally sees eye to eye with Khamenei. But the role of other Iranian power brokers now is far less clear and more potentially threatening. And there are many in the Middle East who say the confusion about Iran's future is just one more of Khomeini's broken promises to Iranians.
He deceived them. They are deceived by Khomeini. He failed spiritually, he failed economically, he failed politically.
There are those who argue that Khomeini's death left the world a safer place and Iran a more dangerous one. But one fact remains. The Ayatollah Ruhollah Mossavi Khomeini was the first Iranian ruler to die in power of natural causes in longer than most of the experts can remember. Doug Tennell, CBS News, Paris.
Few world leaders ever have hated the United States as much as the Ayatollah Khomeini, and few have hated the United States any more than he has. Khomeini earned the hate of Americans in return by holding this country and some of its people hostage for more than a year and being involved in other hostage takings. White House correspondent Jacqueline Adams looks now at the outlook for U.S.-Iranian relations after Khomeini.
In Kennebunkport early this morning, President Bush hadn't heard about the Ayatollah Khomeini's death.
Hear about Khomeini?
But later, he did issue a written statement calling on Iran to move toward a more responsible role in the world. Khomeini became a household name 10 years ago when he declared America the Great Satan and held 52 U.S. citizens hostage for 444 days. For them, his death was a relief.
A certain era has come to a close. Let's hope it's a better one from now on.
But for Americans still being held in Lebanon, Khomeini's death is not expected to have much impact.
We've been bitterly disappointed time and time again. So I hope for the best, but I fear the worst.
Indeed, experts fear that with today's selection of a successor, hardline President Ali Khamenei, the only certainty in Iran is more terrorism aimed at the United States.
Those who promote the revolution are going to be in the business of terrorism in order to provoke us, and we are going to be the target again.
As one faction or another begins to emerge, they are likely to call for outside assistance, and that means that the United States, the Soviet Union, or others could get sucked into this dispute.
But the last time the White House intervened in Iranian affairs produced the disastrous Iran-Contra affair.
I'll tell you what we shouldn't do. We shouldn't send the National Security Council advisor to Tehran with a birthday cake for the Ayatollah's successors and with a copy of the Bible in his other hand. We tried that once. It didn't work.
Since the turmoil in Iran is expected to last for months, experts agree this is one situation where George Bush's well-known caution is an asset. Jacqueline Adams, CBS News, the White House.
Look, they're my parents, and I tell you, they're acting different. I mean, they go dancing. Herbert and Jane dancing. I know, Mother thinks it's fun. She wears eye makeup now. I don't know what's gotten into them. Whose is this? Why don't they act their age?
To help them get more out of life, people are eating better. Some have found Kellogg's Product 19, 100% of 12 vitamins and minerals. Feel good about yourself.
Tennis? They don't play tennis.
Feel like 19 again.
It was Dean Witter's personal philosophy of success.
We have a sacred trust to protect our customers.
But its impact was felt on California Street,
To maintain conservative policies.
on Lincoln Street, and Acorn Street.
To put the interest of our clients first.
Dean Witter put principles before profit, people before portfolios. There are many ways to measure success on Wall Street.
We measure success one investor at a time.
Dean Witter, a member of the Sears Financial Network.
Sure, doctor said it's heartburn.
Heartburn and high blood pressure. Wants him to cut out salt.
For heartburn, take sodium-free Riopan Plus 2. It starts neutralizing acid in 10 seconds.
Feeling better, Dad?
Mm-hmm. Riopan Plus 2, sodium-free, works fast.
The old gray Subaru ain't what she used to be. Introducing the Subaru Legacy.
Soviet President Gorbachev rushed today to the scene of the worst rail disaster in his country's history. A Pravda correspondent on the scene says at least 650 people were killed when a gas pipeline alongside some railroad tracks exploded at the worst possible time. CBS News Moscow correspondent Barry Peterson tells us how it happened.
It was, said one report, a tornado of fire that left behind instant death, twisted debris, and acres of scorched forest. The two passenger trains were reportedly passing in opposite directions when a leaking liquefied gas pipeline exploded. The tracks are part of the Trans-Siberian Railroad, Russia's main link between Asia and Europe. The force of the blast was great enough to break windows more than 7 miles away. Whole cars of the passenger train were said to be simply incinerated. Fires were still burning when Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev and other top government officials arrived on the scene this morning. Soviet television said a complete investigation is already underway as it showed these pictures. The Soviets also showed burn victims being evacuated from a nearby airport. The report said people in the area are rushing to give blood to help a field hospital set up on the scene. The report picked out one child, Alyosha, and said everything will be done to help him. Much of the medical work on the scene was being provided by Army units moved in after the blast. Said one local official in the area, the helicopters are constantly arriving with more injured. In Moscow, the disaster colored a day of unusually heavy politics. Political maverick Boris Yeltsin drew thousands to an afternoon rally, but his usual populist rhetoric was absent. Instead, he called for a moment of silence for the train disaster victims. Tomorrow, the entire Soviet Union will observe a day of mourning for the dead. Gary Peterson, CBS News, Moscow.
A high turnout reported today in Poland's first contested parliamentary election since the end of World War II. Communist leader Wojciech Jaruzelski was among the first to cast a ballot. At his polling place, Solidarity Union leader Lech Wałęsa said he voted for some communist candidates as well as opposition nominees. Wałęsa said that too big a Solidarity victory would not be in Poland's best interests.
Ever try this coffee?
Oh, no. I use a special blend, brewed fresh.
So do we. But then we freeze dry it to lock in superior flavor and aroma until you release it.
Perfect. Who are you?
We're Taster's Choice.
If you thought you had to give up comfort to get a close shave, Norelco says, think again. Their revolutionary shaving system shaves skin close in a way that's incredibly comfortable. As the hair enters the chamber, the patented lift and cut system lifts each hair and holds it a split second before a blade cuts it, so it's possible to shave skin close without the blades even touching the skin. The lift and cut shaving system from Norelco. We made close comfortable.
You're looking at property damage that never happened. Because at Liberty Mutual, our years of experience in helping prevent property losses has made us a leader in business property insurance. Protecting your business property is why America believes in liberty.
How about lunch?
America believes in liberty. Liberty Mutual Insurance.
Today's X-Lax is our good morning, guaranteed.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Medical experts agree. X-Lax actually restores the level of natural fluid in your system.
Good morning.
X-Lax, the sure way back to natural regularity, guaranteed.
Distressing new predictions tonight about the killer disease AIDS. CBS News medical correspondent Susan Spencer is covering this week's International AIDS Conference in Montreal.
About 100 AIDS activists crashed this afternoon's opening session, delaying the start of the conference with shouted demands that the world pay more attention to the AIDS epidemic. The urgency was communicated as well by shocking new estimates that AIDS cases will double in the next 2 years to over 1 million worldwide.
There may be as many as 9 times more AIDS cases emerging during the 1990s than emerged during the 1980s.
A special film shown at opening ceremonies zeroes in on the crisis ahead through the voices of the young.
The only thing we have to do is to be responsible. But when you're young, you know, it's easy to forget.
With education still the key, there will be much analysis here of what does and what doesn't work to control the virus, which is moving now in new directions.
What we're seeing then is a faster transition away from a predominant male disease to a more equal male-to-female distribution in some of these countries.
In Africa, AIDS always has affected men and women equally, but new studies show Brazil and parts of Latin America beginning to see the same thing.
The virus is ahead of us. It had a head start. It spread for almost a decade before we even knew it existed. And therefore, in a sense, we're playing catch-up.
This is the first conference to concentrate on the social as well as the medical side of AIDS, on its political and economic costs. Crucial consideration since no medical breakthrough is expected anytime soon. Susan Spencer, CBS News, Montreal.
Fawn Hall has reportedly admitted that she was a, quote, weekend cocaine user while working in the White House in the National Security Office as Oliver North's secretary. The Washington Post quotes unidentified sources as saying Hall was questioned in a federal investigation of drug use at Washington bars. The Post says Hall is not a target of the investigation and that there are no allegations that she ever actually used drugs at the White House.
With low back pain, every step shoots pain. Up here. Know what helps?
Clinically proven Back Guard, a shoe insert. Watch how it absorbs foot shock to relieve low back pain.
Amazing. Something down here can help up here.
Back Guard from Dr. Scholl's.
The Remington Microscreen Ultimate. With exclusive beard lifter, automatically lifts each whisker. And all Remington Microscreen shavers have 2 thin, flexible screens to shave you as close as a blade or your money back. Remington.
You're about to see what it feels like to have a sinus headache. An invisible force pressing against your nasal passages. A painful pressure building up behind your eyes. And to help take this pressure and pain away, there's new Contact Sinus Formula. Nothing you can buy relieves the pressure and pain better, and it won't make you drowsy. New Contact Sinus Formula. Until there's a cure, there's contact.
Watch your mail for 7 brand new chances to get rich in the American Family Sweepstakes. First to award 2 $10 million prizes. You've already met David Brumbelow. Now meet the second $10 million winner, Janice Hamblin.
You may be next.
The next $10 million winner. And you could win another million July 7th in the only sweepstakes with my picture. Just think, you a millionaire this summer. That's fast. So you be fast. Enter at once.
Fresh pictures are just in from Beijing. The stark daylight of Monday in China reveals ugly scenes of insurrection and death. These new day-after pictures show a city littered with the burned-out wrecks of military vehicles in the streets at intersections. The people of Beijing just stare with disbelief and hurt, their eyes gleaming with a look of disdain and, in some cases, pure hatred. But the pro-democracy, pro-freedom protesters beaten and shot into submission last night and their memory are not simply fading away. The events in China are about so many powerful things, things that are still unfolding, that this weekend is, in a sense, just a blink of history. It's about huge numbers of people. Anything to do with China is always about huge numbers of people. It's about soldiers, an endless sea of soldiers, potential energy, potential violence. It's about struggle. It's about a show of force and the force of frustration. It's about anger and helplessness. It's about courage, courage against all odds. There's always an afterwards, and afterwards it's about emptiness. And it is about consequences, actions that can never, ever be undone. And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. Bill Plant will be here later tonight with the late CBS Sunday Night News, and I'll be back shortly with more on the dramatic China story on tonight's edition of 60 Minutes. That'll be coming up at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, 6 Central. Until then, Dan Rather, see you again soon.
Hello, I'm Kathleen Sullivan.
And I'm Harry Smith.
For information, engaging conversation, and much more.
Join us for CBS This Morning tomorrow.
This is CBS.